After days on the run and an intense high-stakes rescue mission that ultimately saw the destruction of multiple U.S. military aircraft, the United States successfully recovered their missing airman whose F-15E Strike Eagle was shot down on Friday. Now, this daring rescue mission included dozens of fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters, more than a reported 100 special operators, and the direct support of both CIA intelligence gathering and concerted information operations aimed at sowing confusion within the ranks of Iranian militias scouring the region for that downed airman, with supersonic heavy payload bombers dropping a reported 100 tons of GPS-guided bombs on encroaching forces, MQ-9 Reaper drones striking ground troops, closing to within just a few kilometers of that downed airman, Little Bird light helicopter gunships, HH-60W Jolly Green 2 helicopters, and HC-130J Combat Kings, all conducting the search while being engaged by Iranian forces, and still more assets flying in support as that lone American crewman, now confirmed to be a colonel in the U.S. Air Force, made a scrambling ascent up a 7,000-foot peak to avoid capture. The events of this weekend sound like the plot of a blockbuster movie, and heck, maybe one day it will be. But for now, this incredible operation proved conclusively that there is no cost too high, no risk too great, and no threat too potent for American forces to leave one of their own behind. And while losses in warfare are unavoidable, America's willingness to sacrifice hardware to save lives serves as a powerful reminder of what actually matters in the military, in warfare, and in life. Being there for each other when we're needed most. And nowhere is that fundamental truth more emphasized, more affirmed, or more heralded than in the elite ranks of the U.S. Air Force Combat Search and Rescue Units, whose air crews and special operators train specifically to fly directly into a hornet's nest of enemy activity, rescue downed Americans, and fight their way back out. A mindset captured both eloquently and efficiently in their motto, that others may live. So let's talk about the aircraft that went down over Iran last week, the incredible operations that saw all air crews recovered without a single American lost, and the Herculean effort to never leave a man behind. I'm Alex Hollings, and this is a special edition of Air Power.
Box one.
Hey, don't hit skip, I swear. I don't have an ad to read to you today. Instead, I just want to briefly remind you to hit subscribe down below and then go download our entirely free new Sandboxx News app that is now available on iOS and is coming soon to Android devices. Now, our app has all of our long and short form video content, as well as incredible written analysis from our team of veterans, former special operators, former intel agents, and award-winning journalists. There is no cost at all to using this app. We just wanted to consolidate all of our work into one easily accessible place. And that place is now the Sandboxx News app. So go get it and then come back here and let me know what you think. After more than a month of strikes against well north of 13,000 targets all across Iran, with hundreds of American combat aircraft operating inside contested airspace each day, and multiple close calls with Iran's remaining short-range air defense assets, last Friday, April 3rd, seemed to be the day Uncle Sam's luck finally ran out. First, an F-15E Strike Eagle was shot down over central Iran. Now, the Strike Eagle is the air-to-ground-oriented iteration of the famed F-15 Eagle fighter line, combining the Eagle's high speed and aerobatic performance with the ability to carry more ordnance into the fight than the B-29 that dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Now, in order to support complex air-to-ground operations, Strike Eagles fly into the fight with 2 crew members on board, a pilot to manage the aircraft, and a weapons systems officer, or WSO, to manage the jet's vast arsenal of targeting pods, missiles, and bombs. Now, initially, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps claimed that they had shot down an F-35, something they've claimed repeatedly since the U.S. kicked off combat operations against Iran on February 28th, as a part of a widespread influence campaign being waged on really every social media platform. Like Russian influence operations, Iran's efforts are often focused on taking advantage of confusion, popular misconceptions, and especially existing controversy within American and Western political discourse. And the F-35, as we've discussed many times on this channel, is among the most controversial fighter programs of the modern era. So Iran knows that claiming to shoot one down offers the aircraft's outspoken critics incentive to take their claims at face value and advance that narrative regardless of any actual evidence. And to that very point, Iranian forces soon started posting pictures of wreckage that very clearly belonged not to an F-35, but rather to an F-15E from the 494th Fighter Squadron based in RAF Lakenheath in the UK. That red stripe on the top of the vertical stabilizer, along with the paint that clearly shows the US Air Force's and Europe seal right where we would expect it to be on the Strike Eagle, pretty conclusively confirmed it. But for anyone who was still uncertain whether or not it was a Strike Eagle or F-35 that got shot down, Iranian troops soon posted pictures of the ACES-2 ejection seat employed by one of the jet's two-person crew. Now, the Advanced Concept Ejection Seat 2, or ACES-2, is standard across a whole lot, in fact, most U.S. Air Force jets, including the A-10, F-15, F-16, and the F-22. But it is notably not employed by the F-35. F-35 pilots wear an incredibly advanced helmet with integrated augmented reality displays, which gives them unprecedented situational awareness, but comes at the expense of added weight that made ejecting with a standard ACES-2 seat unsafe for pilots' necks. Instead, the F-35 had a new ejection seat purpose-built for the application in the Martin Baker US-16E. So, very quickly, we were able to determine that it was not an F-35 that had gone down and was indeed a Strike Eagle, which meant there wasn't one American on the ground deep inside Iran, there were two. Before long, video started to surface online of a U.S. Air Force HC-130J Combat King II, which is a specialized version of the C-130 Hercules that is purpose-built for search and recovery operations, as well as H-860W Jolly Green II combat search and rescue helicopters, all flying at very low altitudes over Iran and putting themselves at incredible risk as they raced to locate and recover that Strike Eagle's two-person crew. And I want to be clear that it is all but impossible to overstate that risk. Iranian forces very obviously have some sort of air defense capabilities left in central Iran, likely short-ranged infrared guided weapons that would make very short work of any of those search and rescue platforms. After all, they had just successfully shot down a Strike Eagle. But despite that risk, these search and rescue aircraft were seen flying so low that Iranian police officers can be seen in some videos firing at the helicopters from the ground with small arms as they searched. Now, one of those helicopters reportedly absorbed some relatively serious damage, with images surfacing online of it billowing smoke as it returned to friendly airspace and made a safe landing with no casualties. And then, seemingly at right around the same time as that Strike Eagle went down, reports emerged of an A-10 Thunderbolt II, better known as the Warthog, going down as well. Now, initially, it was reported that the attack aircraft had crashed near the Strait of Hormuz, but defense officials later confirmed with NBC that the incident actually took place further north, with the jet hit by Iranian fire, but ultimately making it into friendly Kuwaiti airspace before the pilot ejected. Now, that pilot was also recovered shortly after the crash. Now, despite the claims of some defense officials, it is truly all but impossible to completely eliminate Iran's widespread and very disparate air defense capabilities, even after all of their high-end equipment has been wiped out. While the nation's long-range integrated air defense net has seemingly been destroyed, if not rendered inoperable, Iran still has lots of smaller short-range systems that can be easily hidden until they're used to engage aircraft flying directly more or less above them. Now, many of these systems use infrared guidance, meaning they track heat signatures rather than broadcasting radar waves that could be detected by the fighter. And that means pilots often don't have any notice of an inbound infrared guided missile until it has already been launched. And because these weapons have ranges of only a few miles and very limited reach in terms of altitude, that launch tends to be at extremely close range, allowing for next to no time to react. We've already seen an F-35A seemingly tank a direct hit from one such short-ranged infrared-guided missile a few weeks back, and another F-A-18 Super Hornet very narrowly avoid one about a week ago. These sorts of infrared-guided or electro-optical threats are inherently limited in both engagement range and altitude because, well, they have to rely on line of sight. Iran's domestically produced Misag 1, 2, and 3 series manpads all offer maximum ranges of only around 3 to maybe 5 miles, and maximum engagement altitudes of under 13,000 feet or so. But they're also very easy to hide from prying eyes in the sky, at only about 4 feet long and weighing a total of just about 37 pounds. Now, Iran also boasts larger, short-range air defense systems that can deliver more capability while still remaining small enough to keep tucked out of sight until they're used. Platforms like the Majid air defense weapon system rely on electro-optical targeting. They carry 2 infrared-guided missiles called AD-08s, and they can reach a bit further out, potentially as far as 5 miles or altitudes as high as almost 20,000 feet. Now, you will see claims about this system reaching further online, but it should be noted that those claims are predicated on the launcher being integrated with a Kashef 99 mobile phased array radar system, which, when integrated, would extend its reach while compromising the system's ability to surprise enemy aircraft, because again, it's broadcasting detectable radar waves. Now, what all of this ultimately means is that despite Iran's most capable long-range air defenses being more or less wiped off the board, allowing American fighters, bombers, and even unarmed ISR aircraft to operate over vast swaths of the nation with little in the way of risk, any American aircraft that ventures down below 20,000 feet or so, or especially below the 13,000 foot mark reachable by Misag series manpads, well, they still face serious, though unevenly distributed, pop-up threats. To mash that concept into a very rough ground fighting analogy, you can think of long-range surface-to-air missile systems like rifles, and short-range manpads and the like as pistols. The US has already taken out Iran's rifles, making it much safer to operate inside Iranian territory, but there are still lots of pistols hidden away all throughout the nation that they can hit you with if you come close enough. And nowhere is that risk more pronounced than in the area immediately surrounding a downed aircraft like that Strike Eagle. Not only does downing a fighter jet demonstrate conclusively that there are existing and capable air defense assets nearby, but once a jet goes down, local forces are immediately mobilized all throughout the region to capture the downed airmen and recover as much technology as possible for intelligence assessment and maybe even reverse engineering. And maybe most importantly of all, to secure a huge propaganda victory for the regime, who would then have the opportunity to parade a captured American all across the news cycle, effectively using that American's life as a bargaining chip that no elected official could afford to ignore. And true to that point, Iranian state media, IRIB, announced a cash reward totaling 10 billion tamans, roughly equivalent to 60,000 American dollars, for that airman's capture almost immediately after news broke of the downing. Now that is a lot of money to all the Americans watching this, I'm sure, but you should know that it's a lot more to the Iranian people. The average Iranian citizen only makes between $5,000 and $8,000 a year in equivalent American currency, making 60 grand the equivalent of more than a decade's income for most. After roughly 6 hours on the run, the Strike Eagle's pilot was reportedly rescued amid a heavy firefight that saw U.S. attack helicopters and, quote, attack planes, probably A-10 Thunderbolt IIs, engaging closing Iranian forces as he was picked up and evacuated. That left just the lone weapons systems officer on the run and evading Iranian forces hundreds of miles inside enemy territory. Now, according to officials who spoke to the New York Times on the condition of anonymity, there was initially no sign that the WSO had even survived, with drones combing the airspace for some 14 hours, looking for any indication that he was alive and on the move, but coming up empty-handed. The truth is, there was a non-zero chance that the missing airman didn't even survive the ejection, which often comes with forces that exceed 18 Gs and are often enough to cause spinal fractures in as much as 30% of people who are forced to eject. Fearing the worst, U.S. Central Command prepared a release to acknowledge the loss of the aircraft and the recovery of the pilot. But just before they did, they received a ping from the downed airman's emergency beacon, which is a function of the ANPRQ-7 Combat Survivor Evader Locator radio system. These handheld survival radios are specifically designed to support rescue operations inside enemy territory. First, using GPS coordinates to determine the radio operator's precise location within a few tens of meters anywhere on the globe. Then relaying that information to military satellites via low probability of intercept encrypted ultra-high-frequency transmissions. Now, it can also relay simple text messages back and forth to help coordinate rescue until combat search and rescue platforms like the HC-130 can reach the area. At that point, the radio has two more functions to help improve the chances of rescue. The first is terminal area guidance, which allows combat search and rescue crews to ping the location of the downed airman's radio when they're close enough to get an exact position. And the second is terminal area communications, or enabling direct line-of-sight communications between the rescuers and that downed airman as they approach. Now, with Iranian troops hot on his tail, and despite any injuries he sustained in the ejection, that downed colonel had managed to scramble up a 7,000-foot ridge before climbing into a tight crevice to make himself hard to see from any direction except directly above him. Now, a group of Iranian troops had tracked his presence to that mountain and were beginning to mass at its base. And it goes without saying that that American colonel, armed with nothing more than a 9mm M18 pistol, stood absolutely no chance against a numerically superior force armed with AK-47s and more. That colonel kept his beacon transmitting intermittently to limit the chances that Iranian forces would somehow detect the signal themselves and use it to triangulate his location. But time was running out. At that point, two separate operations centered on the rescue of this missing colonel were already underway. The CIA worked to use its network of assets all throughout Iran to spread the rumor that America had already recovered that missing airman and he was being moved out of Iran via a ground convoy. The idea, it's been reported, was to not only sow doubt in the minds of those who were on the colonel's trail, but also to give Iranian forces a potentially juicy target to divert their attention. After all, if they could successfully intercept that convoy, they not only had the chance to destroy more American equipment, but they could potentially secure an even more powerful propaganda victory in the form of multiple captured Americans and a costly battlefield loss. While the CIA spun up this rumor mill, a group of some 100 of America's most elite special operators, including members of SEAL Team 6, boarded two MC-130J Commando 2s, which are special operations-specific variants of the C-130 Hercules, purpose-built to get operators into and out of contested environments. Now, it seems these MC-130Js were also loaded with 4 MH-6 Little Bird light helicopter gunships to be unloaded for close air support once inside Iran. Elsewhere, a larger force that included operators from the elite Delta Force, as well as a group of Army Rangers, fighter jets, tanker aircraft, and more, all began preparing to go in to support that large rescue force if the worst were to happen and a big ground fight were to kick off. Now, according to the New York Times, there were still concerns that that emergency beacon might be a trap set by Iranian troops who had recovered that downed airman and were hoping to shoot down any rescue effort. In order to ensure that it was indeed the colonel calling for help, the CIA reportedly used an undisclosed technological tool to locate the precise location of the American in that crevice and verify his identity somehow. As darkness fell over the mountain, time was running out for that downed airman, but importantly, darkness is the domain of American Special Operations troops, and as the light waned, the low thud of American helicopters pierced the silence. Tens of thousands of feet up above, 4 American B-1B Lancer supersonic heavy payload bombers dropped 100 2,000-pound JDAMs, eliminating targets on the ground and creating a large buffer zone through which no more Iranian troops would dare cross. And as the helicopters got closer to the downed colonel, he used his radio to tell the rescuers where he could see Iranians closing on his position, allowing them to open up with suppressing fire and keep them from advancing. Now, according to reports, the Iranian troops on the mountain chose not to engage the American rescue force at that point. I mean, even the promise of a once-in-a-lifetime payday just isn't worth meeting your untimely end through a combination of precision gunfire and overwhelming air power. The downed colonel sprang from his hiding place in that crevice and made it on board a landing helicopter, all but certainly believing that he had seen the end of this incredible ordeal. But unfortunately, neither he nor his rescuers were out of trouble just yet. You see, those MC-130Js had landed some 200 miles inside Iran on an austere patch of desert where they established something of a FARP, or forward arming and refueling point. The idea was for the helicopters to return to that point where the rescue team would break down the short-ranged Little Bird helicopters, load them back into the MC-130s, and then all fly out of Iran and straight to a friendly airstrip in Kuwait. But when they arrived, they found the nose landing gear on at least one of those MC-130s, but seemingly both had broken through the firm landing surface and into the loose sand below, making them practically immobile. The rescue team spent hours in the dark, hundreds of miles inside Iran, working to free these aircraft from the sand, but it was just no use. So finally, the decision was made to call in 3 replacement aircraft to pick up that rescue team and the colonel. At that point, reports diverged depending on source. Either the departing special operators loaded their abandoned MC-130s and Little Bird helicopters with explosives and detonated them, or they called for an American airstrike. But regardless of method, the outcome was the same, with all 6 aircraft destroyed to prevent Iranian forces from recovering anything valuable from them. Now finally, as the sun came up on Easter morning, those 3 rescue aircraft took off from their austere airstrip and departed Iranian airspace. All told, rescuing that downed weapons systems officer cost the United States 2 purpose-built special operations fixed-wing aircraft, each of which cost north of $100 million, and 4 more MH-6 Little Birds at maybe more than $7 million apiece, for a total of $228 million in equipment losses, just to save a single downed airman. And in the minds of some, that dollars burned figure represents a loss of some sort for American forces and for the United States at large. Others are looking for signs of some sort of conspiracy afoot because they just can't grasp the idea that a nation would be willing to throw hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment into the grinder just to pull one man out of harm's way. They are already claiming that this incredible rescue operation was actually just a cover for a secret uranium recovery mission, while others are looking for even stranger explanations that might justify, in their minds, such a high expense. But as a U.S. Marine veteran, as a defense journalist who's done this job for a long time, and as an American who's watched rescue operations play out in past conflicts with bated breath, I can tell you pretty unequivocally that these conspiracy peddlers just don't get it in an ethical or even in a practical way. Combat search and rescue is a top priority for American forces for a long list of reasons, some of which fall under ethics, like the commitment the American government and service members themselves make to not leaving a man behind. But others fall under cold, calculating pragmatism and the painful realities of waging war. The truth of the matter is, capturing an American colonel would be a massive propaganda victory for the remnants of Iran's ruling regime that could shift perceptions of this war in the minds of Americans and the world at large, and could serve as a powerful bargaining chip in negotiations aimed at ending it. The American people are tired of long, drawn-out conflicts, and especially of mourning their losses. And every time Iran paraded their captured colonel on state TV, it would serve as a potent reminder of the real American lives at stake in this offensive, and of America's inability to protect its warfighters from the whims of the enemy. In the short term, it would weaken America's position at the negotiating table while simultaneously spurring even more pronounced outrage among Americans who already broadly don't like this war. But in the long term, writing off downed aircrews as acceptable losses or not worth losing equipment over would effectively be telling the young men and women of the United States and their families that their lives are really only worth a certain dollar figure on a spreadsheet they keep somewhere, and nothing more. That runs exactly counter to the foundational beliefs that the U.S. military is built on, that serve not just as the basis for troop morale, warfighting spirit, and good recruiting slogans, but as a foundational truth shared by anyone and everyone who has ever donned the uniform. The United States military is the largest and most powerful fighting force that this planet has ever seen, and its strength is not solely predicated on big budgets and fancy technology. That strength is the sum total of millions of individuals who day in and day out work to get the job done. The American people, heck, the world's people, don't see the vast majority of these young men and women as they work long hours in their shops, devote years of their lives to learning their trades, as they miss out on holidays and special occasions, as they go days, weeks, months, sometimes more than a year without seeing their own spouses or children. We don't see the countless small sacrifices being made every day in the name of mission accomplishment all across America's globe-spanning defense apparatus. We don't see the young men and women who are pushing themselves to get one more push-up or one more job done, one more bolt turned before the end of the day because they know some things matter more than being comfortable. We don't see young non-commissioned officers giving up the little free time that they have to help the younger guys and gals find their way in their new gun clubs, or the lost sleep, the stress, or the anxiety of deployments. When we talk about the cost of American military might, we tend to talk about dollars and cents because that's the only part that we, the taxpayers, are on the hook for. But the majority of the real cost never reaches our wallets. It's paid in full, each and every day, by the men and women who lace up their boots each morning and go out and make mission. Those lost aircraft might represent dollars and cents that could have been better spent elsewhere to you. But to the American military, they are tools. Tools that enable the mission. Tools that can save lives. And most importantly, tools that can be replaced. Because what's the point of having the largest air force on the planet if you aren't willing to drop a few airframes off your roster to save the life of someone who has already sacrificed so much? For the American Armed Forces and for each individual service member working under our flag, this weekend's rescue mission was nothing more than the reciprocation of promises that were made a long time ago. Service members keep their promise every day, working tirelessly to make mission and accomplish the objectives set for them. And when they find themselves in the worst possible scenario, with enemies closing in on all sides and practically no hope for escape, the US military keeps its promise by using all of its immense power to bring them home, or to die trying. And today, 15 years and 50 pounds out of service, I am still damn proud to have been part of an organization like that. And with that, ends this special edition of Air Power from Sandboxx News. I'm Alex Hollings. Make sure to swing by sandboxnews.com and download the Sandboxx News app, available now for iOS and coming soon for Android devices, to stay on top of all things military all the time. If you got anything out of today's video, make sure to click like and subscribe down below and leave me a comment so I know what I should cover next. And of course, don't forget to tap on that bell icon so you never miss a drop from Sandboxx News.